Was the Earth really created in just 6 days? We'll find out today on the Why Do Christians podcast. Hey, welcome to the show. My name's Mark Dickey. I host the afternoon show on the Bridge radio station. My co-hosts, Pastor Burt and Pastor Josh. How's it going, guys?
Great. I concur.
All right.
Yeah.
So we're talking about the Earth being created in 6 days. First of all, someone might say, but Pastor, I thought the world was created in 7 days.
Yeah, but no, Genesis 1 says that he created the earth in 6 days, and on the seventh day he rested, so there was no creating happening on the seventh day.
That's right. Yeah. So even though it's 6 days, everything happened in 6, but the seventh day, 6, 7.
There he is.
Okay, anyway, so let's talk about it. I mean, we had to do that reference once, right? No, we
might not have.
We didn't.
It's all right, keep going.
All right. So 6 days, this is way contrary to what non-Christians would say is how long the earth took to be created, to form.
Develop,
which would be billions and billions of years.
Yeah.
And that really, as a Christian who I kind of grew up believing, just the literal creation of everything, Big Bang and all of that. And so when I heard that Christians actually believed that it all happened in 6 days, I kind of thought they were crazy.
Yeah, well, I think it doesn't help. Okay. So what this comes down to is a reading of one chapter of the Bible, the first chapter of the Bible. Are we interpreting it right? I think what doesn't help is that sometimes it's characterized as either you're a Christian and believe in a literal 6 day creation, or you're an unbeliever or something. So what is put forward is the idea of it's sort of an all or nothing, that if you believe in the Bible, you will believe that this chapter is teaching a literal 6 day creation versus you don't believe in the Bible at all. And this is popularized by various groups who may focus in on Genesis in ways that aren't always, I think, the most helpful. And so I think it's important to realize, like, wherever we land on this, that Christians have, since there have been Christians, disagreed about how to read Genesis 1. Notable Christian thinkers throughout the ages who we trust and like their stuff have said, guys, I think this is not meant to be read literally. A couple of them who spring to mind, C.S. Lewis, author of Chronicles of Narnia, Mere Christianity, he believed that it was a teaching point, allegorical. St. Augustine, who's a notable Christian thinker, Augustine actually believed, this is wild, so, and neither of them was it, Lewis would say, all right, yeah, let's compare this with the science of our day. Augustine believed that it was a teaching point in Genesis 1 to the point where he's like, I think God did it all in a moment. I don't even think it was 6 days.
Really?
Yeah, he's like, I think God just did it, and then it's broken down into these 6 days to teach us stuff about creation. So this is a thing where Christians have disagreed for a long time. It's not an issue of do people believe in the Bible or not. The issue is what's the right interpretation. And I think that's where we dialogue. Like, is it true to the text to believe that Genesis 1 is teaching that God made the earth in 6 24-hour periods?
Yeah. Here's a question. Should I stop being friends with somebody over this debate?
Absolutely.
Cool.
Yeah. No, not at all. Not at all.
Yeah. I don't know. There's so many typical debates of the Christian faith where you feel like you lose friends if you have to pick a side. So you just agree not to talk about it.
Yeah, I would say the same thing. I don't think you need to stop being friends. I think what tends to happen is people evaluate the other person's faith based on how much they believe what I believe, right?
In terms of interpretation.
Yeah. If you believe what I believe, then you're really growing in your faith. But if you have a different view of something, then maybe your faith's not that great, my guy. Maybe you're not that close to Jesus. And thank God that's not the way that he's kind of brought us in. And just like you said, Bert, there's so many great men great theologians who are on all different sides of the spectrum. And not one of us would say, at least not me, that I'm in any form or anywhere close to them, right? But they're all over the place.
Yeah. And to make it, like maybe you're hearing this and you come from like a camp that's like, well, hold on, like we believe in the Bible. And so for you guys to even say that somebody could be a Christian and not believe in the literal 6th day. And before you tune out, by the way, I do believe in the literal 6th day. So don't be like, oh my gosh, he's yeah, right. Okay. And hopefully we'll get to, at least for my end, why that it is. But what can happen is you look at this, you're like, well, like, no, if they don't read it this way, it means they don't believe in the Bible. To which we want to say, well, hold on, the Bible, remember, it's 66 books under one cover, right? The Bible is not one genre. There's all kinds of genres in the Bible. So you have narrative, like a reporting of history that's written out, but you also have poetry. You've got prophecy. You've got all kinds of stuff. The problem, why there's such disagreement around Genesis 1, is that it's not written like a typical narrative. Right? So if you're reading it through, right, God created the heavens and the earth, and it says, God said, let there be light, there was light, and then there's the animals, whatever, and every phrase begins with God said, and it was so, and it ends with there was morning, there was evening, the blank day, and that phrase repeats throughout the whole thing. The problem with that section is it's not written like a narrative, but it's also not written definitively like a lot of Hebrew poetry that we see. It's its own kind of thing, and so there's disagreement around how to read it. And we have to have that space within biblical interpretation where we can say that, like, hold on, we need to figure out the best way to interpret this because we could be reading it wrong, because ancient Near Eastern writers, like the author of Genesis, didn't write the way that 21st century Westerners like us read things. And so we want to, as students of the Bible, understand that we want to approach the scripture to let it speak for itself rather than us insert an interpretation upon it.
Okay. And there's all kinds of theories and stuff of, oh, well, God didn't create the sun until
Day 4, I think, yeah.
Yeah, and so what we measure days by the sun and the rotation of the earth. So the first couple days could have actually been billions of years. What do you say to when people bring that argument up?
Yeah, like where they get that idea from. So the word that we translate as day there is the Hebrew word yom, and it can be a literal 24-hour period, but it can also be epochs of time, like expanses. And so that's where the difficulty comes from, and we want to be clear to that. Now, I think the reason that Josh and I both, because we both agree on the reading there, take a 6-day creation is not because it has to be like 6 days, like in terms of 24-hour period, but rather, at least for me, I mean, I don't know if you disagree. For me, it comes down to the way that other passages in Scripture speak about the creation story and the way that they treat it. That's where I tend to go, like, hold on, there's something else, or there's something there, I think. I don't know.
Yeah, I would say the same thing. I mean, when we look at other passages in Scripture, specifically when you get to like the law where God says like 6 days will a man work and on the seventh he'll rest. Like the very idea of that comes from that it took him 6 days and he rested in the seventh.
Yeah, it's Exodus 20:11.
Yeah.
So the Lord worked on 6 days and on the seventh he rested.
Right, and so that it would rip that idea out if it was eons. Like
so, which we're all mixing up timelines and stuff because of what different people believe, but Exodus, so the book after Genesis, so way back in time. I'm not using actual time, years because time is debatable in this
16,
episode.
Yeah. So,
but in that time period, a long time ago, they viewed it as 6 literal days.
Right.
That's wild. I've never thought about that before.
Yeah, that's what God appeals to in the Exodus. And this is something else, by the way. So we talk about this idea of, I know a lot of Christians who are caught between a rock and a hard place where they're like, well, hold on. I'm expected to believe in a literal 6 days, but here's all this scientific evidence for the earth or the universe being much older than what the Bible accounts for. And I think there are a couple things. Number one, we want to hold this. We talked on the show before about the study of open-handed and closed-handed ideas, right?
Yeah.
Or we'd say, like, sort of majors and minors in theology. There are some things that, like, our hand is closed and we can't budge because they define the faith. The divinity of Christ, his literal resurrection from the dead, the Trinity, those sorts of things. Like, you can't budge on those and be a Christian. There are other things where we can disagree, maybe explore a little bit, maybe engage, and I think that the age of the earth is one of those things, because number one, there's not a Bible verse that says the earth is X amount of years old, right? There are groups who will infer through interpretive work, oh, it's 7,000 years or whatever, and we've also talked on the show before about this. Like the difficulty with that is, like when you've got people being ancestors of other people, the word that will translate as father can sometimes mean literal father. It can also mean ancestor of. In fact, you can find that in the Gospel of Matthew. Like he'll intentionally omit people because he's doing something numerically. So it's impossible to date the earth with, I think, what the Bible actually writes about. Okay, but for the person who's going like, well, what do I do with? Okay, there's I don't know, carbon dating, or there's this issue or that issue. So how can the earth look this way if God made it in this finite amount of time? Like, shouldn't things be more spread out? And I mean, have you heard that concern and question before?
Yeah, all the time. I know for me that was a question and concern too. It's like, well, I'm going to school and I'm hearing all of this science. So what do you do with it? And that is a question I think I still struggle with a little bit, because there's a big part of it where it's like, sure, maybe there are in there somewhere millions of years. I wouldn't be able to tell you, and I think that's where where the scriptures don't say that information, right? They don't share that, and so there's no way I could say science is completely wrong, and I don't think there's a way to go to.
Well, no, I hear you, and I think this is where, for me, maybe my pastor hat will show rather than Bible scholar or historian, where like some people in that field, they might just come at me with pitchforks right now for what I'm about to say, because it just might be a little too simplistic.
Okay.
So an area, how I find comfort in that with, hold on, if it's described in this way, and yet we can see with what we've got now, things are developed in much more of an expanded amount of time. I look within the text itself, and I see particularly the creation of mankind, right? So he makes them male and female in Genesis 1, and you've got the more in-depth creation story in Genesis 2, like, God fashioning Adam from the dust and stuff like that. And what's interesting to me to note is that when he fashions Adam from the dust, he fashions him as a man, not a baby, not a child, a full-grown man. Meaning from nothing, he creates something that is at its developmental height. And so, like, right there, I mean, there's no umbilical cord with Adam. There's no mother. Like he is now a living man. And so for me, it's not a stretch. And maybe I'm wrong here. Maybe again, this is too simplistic. It's not wrong for me to go, well, hold on. If that's how he does it in the creation story, why do I think it's got to be this domino effect of this, then this, then this, then this in a longer amount of time? Like, what is to stop the supreme creator of the universe feeling like, here it is, and I recognize that in order for it to work in a way that is habitable and sustains life, it's got to have all this stuff that's developed in a certain way, and so I'm going to just create it developed in that certain way. Where for us, within a framework of timelines and geology and stuff like for us, we can only gauge it by our experience. But we're dealing with an entity who's beyond all of our experience. And so it's not hard for me to just be like, yeah, I can see why it would look like that. And yet this story tells me that he's great at just creating stuff that I would call older that actually isn't older. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
I think that's really good, and I think that makes sense. I think of Jesus in John 3, well, no, not John 3, book of John, turning water into wine.
Yeah.
And you think it's aged wine, and it's good.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah,
if you just make wine, it's not that good. It's not that good. And so in that sense, someone who would have tried to date that wine would have been like, "Oh man, this must have been prepared for years. This would have been really good."
Wow.
Yeah.
Right? Did you just pull that out of nowhere, or have you done a sermon on that? Because that's awesome.
I own a unicorn that gives me special.
No, that's okay. The brilliance of
Let's move on.
Let's not undo the clout that we're gaining here with somebody who's on the fence of the faith.
I know, right? Yeah,
this guy believes in unicorns somehow. No, he doesn't. That's not what he was saying. Okay.
That's phenomenal. So it kind of debunks what I wanted to bring up next. Was just how the verse actually words it. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. The earth was formless and empty. And so, Burt, you might know what the actual meaning of formless and empty actually is. But to me, I picture a rock that was there before God started. Another thing in verse 2, it's still verse 2. The earth was formless and empty. Darkness was over the surface of the deep. Spirit of God was hovering over the waters. And so there was water. There was the earth. My faith doesn't hinge on this detail, but like, if we can prove that carbon dating is 100% accurate, it wouldn't break my faith.
Well, I mean, that's good. The word that we translate as formless or empty, void, is the Hebrew word bahu. Bahu, right? And something to know with that narrative there, like a big theme, man, this is so overarching biblical theology. A big theme is God creating order where there's chaos. Mm-hmm. Right, like chaos, and again for us, just an evidence for a creator. What's one of the biggest ones? Intelligent design. That there seems to be rules in how creation works. Right. Okay. Well, Genesis begins with God putting order where there is chaos. So you've got the Spirit of God over the waters. Right, and so we don't have a whole lot of time to go into this, but in ancient Near Eastern thought, a lot of times the waters has to do with the place of evil spirits, chaos, that kind of thing. And so in the narrative, what it's saying is that God is king over the creation. Mm-hmm. Like he's the one who, that's why he and he'll talk about this in Job, I told the waters to go this far and no further, and with the land. So it's not so much, I think it would be wrong to be that the earth that God is just, so it says God created the heavens and the earth. So it's not this thing of the earth was just existing. It's that he's, in the way that he creates it, he's doing something intentional with it. Does that make sense?
That makes sense.
Okay.
Yeah. So not that we've been off topic, but to get back to the initial question of, was the earth made, did it all happen? Did God create it in 6 days? We promised answers at the end of this. And what can we give our listeners as we wrap up the topic?
Like evidence for it?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think the one who can probably definitively settle this debate is Josh Yakush.
I knew you were going to go there. Okay. I'll throw out why I think it's a literal 6 days. A couple of thoughts, and I think maybe you could jump in and share some. We'll see. Okay. Well, for one, I think Jesus talks about the beginning that way when he says, did you not read? Almost clarifying, did you guys misunderstand what was clearly written? That God made male and female. He's harking right back to Genesis. I think also we have a tendency to be embarrassed by the scripture. Mm. When God clearly speaks, and it's so opposed to what the culture and the times say, that we tend to shrink back and start to kind of try to make it work. But really, the only thing that's outlast all of the culture and time has been the Word of God. It has remained true just through everything. I think one of my biggest reasons for believing 6 day, besides all the verses we mentioned and everything, is the end times. I notice when I read the end times, I don't have any problems with it, where God says he will roll back the heavens and the earth. In one day, Christ will return. All things will change. I'm like, yep, that day, that day, right? Because it's not impacting what I'm hearing from the culture. It's not impacting in any of that. And so that future thing that's out there, right? Okay. But I see myself, anyway, long story short, if God can do it at the end like that, mm-hmm. and he means it, in one day you will see, then surely then in the beginning, when he said, in one day I did this, then he can, right? Yeah. And so I kind of pair the two together, that when he says what he's going to do at the end, that he's not going to take eons to do that. So there's a few more, but those are just a couple of the, we could talk about Jesus multiplying bread and fish. He does this on the mountain, right? But then we're on Genesis, I don't know. I don't know if he could multiply fish.
And even if you scientifically showed how to multiply, he did it 5,000 times. Well, right. 5,000 people, men.
Yeah, fed with bread, right?
And with bread.
Could you? All right, let's just. All right, look, you got to look at me, okay? if this is a piece of bread, if it's this, Jesus did 5,000 reps. Think of it like a gym workout. Like that's going to take some time, but he did it that afternoon.
Yeah. But, I mean, you think about the power to heal, restoring dead bodies. I mean, just the amount of power it would take from his word alone to do that instantaneously. I mean, if he could cause, I think some of the ideas, when you look at the Old Testament, you see Abraham and you see his wife, and from them come a nation. I would have never been, and so, but then I struggle with Genesis, with Adam and Eve becoming a nation and then filling the world, earth, right? But sure, he does it again and again and again, and so I don't know. It kind of makes me wonder, like, well, why am I struggling with Genesis 1 and 2? There must be something there that makes me, and I think it is the clear and sheer power that God displays there. That frightens me. That I don't have a category for that. That makes me go, he is great, and I need to bow quickly. All right. I mean, he's mighty, and it's such a display because the universe is so massive. And I think that's what it says in Romans chapter 1, right? That the universe displays his majesty, his glory, like his divinity. But yeah, it does. Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that frightens people.
I like that. Look, neither Josh nor I are apologists. What that means is, like, we are not people who specialize in making arguments for the faith. We're pastors. There are great arguments for believing in a younger earth, and particularly dismissing Darwinian evolution when it comes to the idea of, like, and let's be clear, evolution is not that life mutates, right? So, think like Darwin's finches, where, hey, they're birds on different islands in the Galapagos, and so because they have different kinds of beaks, this shows evolution to be the case. That's microevolution. I don't know any Christian who has a problem with that.
Yeah.
Macroevolution, and this is what the atheist or the naturalist would adhere to rather than a belief in a creator, says that all of life, plant, human, animal, all of it came from the same place. Simple single-cell organisms that began to live for reasons that are not entirely, well, they're not provable at all. They've never been able to create that. But somehow, this bacteria developed, and from that, over millions and millions of years, here we are, right? There are great arguments against that. And if I could reference one, a really easy read is a book by Lee Strobel called The Case for Creator. It's a great book because he interviews different scholars and scientists. One guy that stands out to me, a guy named Michael Behe, I forget how you say his last name. And he talks about there are certain things that are basically, they're called, what's it? Irreducibly complex. In other words, like, there are things where if you change any part of it, it falls apart. So, for instance, like if you have like a mouse trap, if you get rid of the spring, it's not a mouse trap. If you get rid of the wood, it's not like if you remove any part of it, it doesn't exist anymore as it is. And he gives the example of like the eye, like an eye, in any being that has sight. If you remove anything that makes the eye work as it currently is, there is no eye. There is no ability for sight. It's not simple as something just adding stuff later on as time goes on. It doesn't work like that. There are all kinds of arguments along these lines. For us, that's not what makes or breaks it. A belief in Genesis 1 comes from not a need to date the earth, but from, and if I'm hearing you right, Josh, it comes from a conviction that the historical accounts of Christ are true. That, like, what the gospel narratives present about the life of Jesus of Nazareth is historically reliable, and I think just about everybody who studies that in depth. I mean, how many stories are there of people where they decide, I'm going to research the gospels, they look into it, and they end up converting just because of how reliable the gospel narratives are. Mm-hmm. Okay, we believe in this reading of Genesis because we believe that's what the readings of the life of Jesus Christ teach, and we believe the accounts of that life to be reliable. And so our faith doesn't rise and fall on how we read Genesis 1. It rises and falls on who was and is Jesus Christ. And that's where we go.
Nice. Well, hopefully you got a nugget or 10 from this conversation about the earth being created in 6 literal days. If you have questions or ideas for future episodes, or if there's something that could be more clear, let us know in the comments or email us podcast@wearethebridge.org. Thanks for watching.